All right. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome to this week's, Ascension Ground Crew Check-In.
Yay.
And we're going to get started. So, Mom, would you like to kick us off here with what
Oh,
you
thank
were
you so
thinking
much.
about?
Yeah, I've had something on my mind. It's so kind of you to let me say it. So, yeah, I have been thinking about we all have more than 20 years on a spiritual path. We were sort of inclined in this life towards spiritual matters, but didn't choose the priesthood or a nunnery. We chose a secular life, but have been spiritual or religious people for most of our, waking moments. So we have a long history of the ups and the downs and the left turns and the right turns. And I was talking with someone the other day about progress doesn't go in a straight line. There's that meme that shows the bumblebee. This is what progress actually looks like. It's not like a straight line, like a stalk that's going through the roof or something. And I think the spiritual journey, the ascension process, the self-development we're engaged in is like that too. And I think I confessed to Brian years ago that, I was always a good student. I turned my book report in on time and I'd get gold stars and I'd be at the top of the class. And that reward structure really, served me well. And I thought it translated to my spiritual work. Like I'm immune. I've been inoculated from difficulty in my life because I'm praying, I'm meditating, I read scripture, I help other people, and so I've ticked everything off the list of what a good spiritual person does. I should have no trouble in my life. This is a very incorrect assumption on my part. Where does this trouble come from? I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do to be a good person and to lead a good life and to walk with God. Yet sometimes there's rainy days and trouble comes. So I just wanted to have a little discussion about times that we have felt things are going so smoothly. Well, should I give credit to my spiritual practices and my inspirational reading that I'm doing, the good deeds I perform? And then when times are going badly, wait a minute, am I doing something wrong or did I not do it well enough, often enough? And there's an underlying bad assumption in there that maybe we could examine a little bit that things unfold as they should. All things unfold for our good eventually. We might have to wait a couple of chapters and then look back in the story to find out why that was good for me. But that's what I was thinking about this week.
So, Brian, you want to say
Okay.
something? Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, and I think you can look at it that way. You can you can look at it kind of like with the reward and punishment system with God.
Yeah.
You can look at it that way. Um, And lately, I do think of God in a more personal kind of way. I've kind of been exploring that more. I used to think of it in a more impersonal way.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of aspects to that. So one thing is, if something doesn't go your way, that might actually be better for you,
Mhm.
um, because it makes you deeper. It leads you to a deeper level of growth. So sometimes when we think something isn't good for us, it might actually be better for us than what we wanted. I mean, that's a possibility. And another way to look at it is just basically instead of viewing it through the lens of events and which events have unfolded, you can always take it to the level of, perspective, like sort of where the events sort of become irrelevant in a way. I mean, they always have some meaning, but it's just a matter of you shifting your perspective or shifting your consciousness around something so that you're in a good state around it. I mean, and if you become a complete master of that, the events sort of don't matter. So this is kind of like there's stories of like the really advanced yogis. I mean, they get to a point where events just actually don't even matter.
Mm.
They really don't care. They're just in some really high state. It doesn't even matter. Like they don't care if someone comes and kills them. It doesn't matter.
Mm.
Um, there's stories of like yogis walking around naked and then they get arrested. They don't even care. It just doesn't. They're just in a blissful state. They don't care. So if you master the whole perspective thing, where you're just always in a really good state, if you get to an extremely high level of that, actually all events in your life sort of become irrelevant. You're kind of just locked into bliss, peace, joy, love, everything else. It doesn't even really matter. So that's one way to look at that. Angela, did you have
Yeah,
something you wanted to?
you picked up the thread of thought that I was having sort of, while Myrna was speaking, because um there's the classic Job situation, right? I mean, how much more testing can I stand, God? I mean, this and this and this and then this and then I mean, it's like, how far down on my knees do you want me to go? You know? And to me, I always saw that as um, it's a choice how you respond to the external stuff happening, and um some time back I've been doing this whole like going through all of my belongings in my house, and some time back I was going through my filing cabinet and going and looking at this career identity I had. So some people, and also I was watching myself. I was like, if I'm watching myself, and why am I happy? Why am I gleeful? Why am I choosing to be happy about this? Because I could very easily be kind of in a grieving mode. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? I mean, it could be like this old part of myself, all this old nostalgia, all these old things, this old way of being. I could just be in this I could get kind of down about it, like, oh, those were the good times. In fact, I remembered a song, this is a very old song. Those were the times, those were the days, my friend. We thought they'd never end. We thought, and it was like, I'm laughing at myself because there's this little eensy part of myself that wants to go play me a small little violin, instead. And then there's the bigger part of me that's more in charge that is just instead looking at this as a good thing. Get rid of these things, right? So I really feel like though I want to be sensitive, so if things are happening in the world that are difficult and there are people suffering and there are people going through pain and all of that. For instance, when my father recently passed away, some of us in the family went into a grieving process, and some of us didn't really go into that much of a grieving process because perhaps, we are in different places in our journey with this individual in our life who was quite a teacher for all of us. And his passing for me was good for him. He gets to release the bonds of this life and go on to something better. At least that's my belief. And so, therefore, he's released the kind of small little container he put himself in, and now he can be this expanded consciousness again. And I was thinking how much relief he must feel, and I was happy for him. And when I grew up in New Orleans, in the New Orleans area, and they would have jazz funerals where people would be playing, like have a parade, and play music and then have a party. And of course, in New Orleans, everything is an excuse to have a party. I recognize that, including death. But I always that made an impression on me as I was a kid that you could choose to look at things from a different perspective, like you were talking, Brian. So I think that things, like you said, Myrna, are going to continue to happen. You're still going to have challenges. You're going to still have external events that happen that you really don't have much control over. But you can be like the master. I watched a podcast recently. I cannot remember who was interviewing who, because, I watch so many podcasts, but there was a podcast and it was a gentleman who's some sort of a master or teacher in India. And the podcaster was interviewing him, and the podcaster said, "So what is making you excited these days?" And he said, "Nothing is making me excited because when you're a master, you just don't get excited." So it made me think about what you just said, Brian, which is they walk around and they don't care. It's like And you and I had a conversation about this not long ago, Myrna, where we were talking about being attached to praise or being attached to
Mhm.
when someone is giving you, say, a negative review or giving you some sort of feedback that makes you feel, like because you're just so attached to the identity of that.
Mhm.
And to get the mastery of that means that even though your journey is like a bumblebee,
Mhm.
at some point you just look at that and go, isn't that lovely? I've been taking this journey and having these experiences, and it just is what it is. It's a choice ultimately to choose to look at it that way. But I still think you can have compassion for not only yourself and your past suffering and how you've come through it, but also others who haven't gotten to the point where they can release the and detach from that, like you were talking about, Brian, where they can say, really, it is what it is, and it's just an experience. Just one more experience. Just one more experience. Yes, I acknowledge it, and then it's just an experience, right? And that sounds weird, I know, because it sounds like, well, you must be apathetic or you must be,
A nihilist. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. And that's not really what it's like because when you get to a sense of sacred neutral, you just see everything for what it is and you bring curiosity to it. You bring observation in itself is a fascinating state of being. Observation is a fascinating state of being. And just because you don't have all of the angsty feelings, woe is me, I'm a victim, whatever, it doesn't mean it's not a valid state of being. It's a very valid state of being. It's just one that I think we humans are not really used to experiencing, at least on a full-time basis.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, and I when I wrap my head around this, or I have any experience where I'm feeling like that, where I get moments like that, because I'm not full-time doing that either. Um, but I get glimpses into it and get experiences of feeling that way that I look at the journey and I go, wow, the way I used to handle this is so different. I mean, I used to have a Monday morning freak out when things weren't going my way. It's new week and things are not going my way. Freak out. Or do morning pages, like ad nauseum, morning pages. And that morning pages journaling process is something from Julia Cameron that really did help at the time that I was doing it until it didn't help anymore. And it wasn't a practice that really helped me anymore. So I feel like we just still are evolving. We're going through an evolution process. And I believe that in the ascension process, we will all become masters and walk around with um, we don't care about the machinations of the lower density, like the lower density things. Like that is not it doesn't matter, because you're more in a blissed out state. You're not in an apathetic state, you're in a blissed out state. And so can you imagine walking around in a blissed out state where, you love people? You're going through your thing, let me give you a hug. I mean, that would be great if we just literally embraced people or figuratively embraced people rather than getting into the angst with them, so to speak, or giving into the angst that's around us. Because if you go really within and you go connect really into the seat of your heart, into the holy of holies places inside yourself, it's bliss out, baby. It's not that stuff going on. That stuff doesn't matter. Wow, thanks for spurring that as a deep thought I just came up with. Thank you. Thank you, Myrna,
I wanted to comment on the river that's moving behind you on the screen.
yeah, we're in the
And
mountains.
yeah, it made me think of
Mhm,
this idea that, the masters represent of being in the world, but not of it.
mhm,
It's not that you don't care, it's that it doesn't drive your decisions, it doesn't drive your actions. You're more in witness to what happens than you are attached to it.
yeah.
And, as you talked about the seat of your heart, Yogananda has a saying that we all have a portable paradise within
Mm,
us, the place where nothing changes. And then out in the world, everything changes like that river moving. It doesn't ever stop moving. Time doesn't stop moving. Things don't stop changing. Change, change, change.
mhm,
And you can react to it or you could witness it, but There is a portable paradise internally where you can connect with the changeless nature of creation, your part in it, your connection with God. And so that doesn't give you a guarantee that you won't have difficulty out here. But you can certainly navigate it more easily if you can come back to the silent, still place that never changes, while then coming back out and working with whatever changes before you. So that river is particularly apropos today.
Well, and of course, I we could go deep with this, and I know Brian could, especially with all the philosophy he studied. But it's
Thousand
about
feet deep.
so whatever's going on out there that you perceive as troubles or whatever, is it really real? No, is that really real?
Is it a play? Is it a movie? Is it a simulation? Yeah, I don't know.
So, I
Yeah,
guess.
I mean, so I think a lot of this is about sort of, I would say, cultural reinforcement versus the reality of human consciousness. So, I mean, basically, the thing is when you're in the world, right? You're going to your job 5 days a week. There's a cultural reinforcement. So you you know, you meet with, you confront, you deal with the same types of attitudes over and over from the people at your workplace. They sort of expect you to agree. They kind of expect you to go along with the regular complaints or the regular, attitudes or this and that about work, about life, about the news, about whatever. So it creates like a feedback loop, a cultural reinforcement. And so basically people tend to get locked into that kind of consciousness and they're sort of on the hamster wheel of that, right? So the same types of things just keep spinning round and round. The same dramas, the same emotions, the
Yeah.
same. So, I mean, at a certain point, you have to make a choice if you're going to get off that wheel
Mhm.
and sort of be in your own state of being, be in your own state of consciousness, and find your own processes to be where you want to be, in in the world of consciousness, right? As you go through life. Um, and really that's probably one of the main things of awakening is basically that process right there is sort of stepping off the cultural hamster wheel of these are the same emotions we always go through. These are the same dramas that everyone around you goes through, and everyone kind of reinforces it in each other. I mean, in a way, that's the matrix. That's sort of the emotional, cultural sort of aspect of the matrix right there. Um, yeah, but I mean, I think, you know, probably the smartest thing to do is to just find like one key process that works for you where you can step off that hamster wheel and just always be in a good state.
Mhm.
I've tended to be more of a spiritual explorer or investigator, so I always try all these different things. But honestly, the smartest thing you could do is just find the thing that works the best and just
Mhm.
keep doing that. That's probably like if you really just want to be in a good state all the time, that would be the best thing to do.
Yeah.
So,
And for some of us, that's maybe reading scripture, or maybe that's
yeah.
for me, it's nature, looking at the trees, looking at the birds. I just, while we were talking, a herd of deer just kind of ran across my yard. That was like startling me. And then also art, doing art in some way, expressing yourself creatively is a spiritual practice in itself because you're tuning into some creative force that is our true nature. So there's so many different things you can do, and whatever that is. You guys are writing a book on high vibration, right? On high
Yeah.
frequency, right? So trying to keep yourself in this high vibe state, that I think is you're right, the most important or number one way to help you navigate through whatever looks like the muck, whether someone is like aiming it directly at you or you're just noticing it in the cultural, zeitgeist that we're all glomming onto this, painful thing or this difficult thing or whatever. So, Yeah, I like that idea that you just have to find what it is that helps you navigate and move your boat in the fast-moving river.
Mhm.
Well, I think in terms of reward structure, the reward is that you can find peace. You know, you can find the changeless while everything around you is changing. And that gives you kind of a compass, a true north that you know you can always return to. Whatever's going on, however much sense of it you make. Doesn't make any sense, it makes some sense. Well, in 5 years, I'll probably be laughing about this. It's not very fun right now, though. But wherever you are, that is something you could do is reward yourself with some peace. And however you get there, morning pages, contemplation, meditation, prayer, however you get there. So, yeah.
All right. So, anyone have anything else, or are we ready to wrap it up?
Yeah, that's good. Sounds good. With some deep
All
thoughts
right.
this week.
Yes, that was good. So that wraps it up for this week's Ascension Ground Crew meeting, and everyone have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.